didn't come from money. I didn't have rich parents. I didn't have special connections, and I definitely didn't have a trust fund. When I started, I was making $700 a month managing a 60-unit apartment building. Today, I own over 10,000 units, and those properties pay me every single month, whether I work. People love to say you need luck, timing, or talent to get rich. Well, that's just an excuse. The truth is, wealth is a formula. And if you follow it long enough, it works every time. The same system that took me from managing one building to owning thousands, I'm going to break it down for you in this video, step by step. Because if you understand this, you'll never have to rely on luck, talent, or anyone else again.
Yeah, I really think there's four keys to a deal, right? And I talk about this all the time. In order for a transaction to happen, you need the actual transaction. Somebody's got to go find the deal, right? And you don't find those on the MLS, right? You have to kind of have a little bit of financial IQ, some connections that you developed over time to gain access to these deals. Then there's the expertise to make the deal jump off the spreadsheet and actually work in reality. So there's the deal and the expertise. Then there's the capital and the credits. And if I try to do real estate by myself, at some point, I'm going to run out of one of or all four of those things. And this is why real estate's such a great leverage. Ken, I told you this when we did our last video for my summit a couple weeks ago. You've been paying me for years. You've been paying me for years because I invested in one of your syndications, Tucson 8, and you had the deal. You had the expertise. I had the capital at that time, and I didn't have the deals or the expertise, and I gave you the money and you paid me. We both won in that equation. And so I think if you can really get your head around this, and this is what I think, Ken, you talked about risk. I think the biggest risk is not using your time, using your intention today to buy back your time. Ken, you probably talk to just as many people as I do that have followed the path, right, for 20, 30, 40 years in some cases. They didn't get what they thought they were going to get. They've already traded 40 years of their life, and they're wondering, how am I going to do the future, right? They're settling. They're readjusting what they thought retirement was. They're becoming dependent. And I think the biggest risk is assuming things that you have no control over are actually going to give you an outcome that you want without you taking ownership over that outcome. And when you get clear on what you want and why you want it, the only thing that's standing in your way is you have to raise your financial IQ. Today,
gold is near all-time highs, but appreciation isn't the only way to benefit. Monetary Metals, you could potentially earn a yield on your gold, paid in physical gold, without selling it. Here's how it works. When you lease your gold through their platform, pre-qualified companies pay to use it under strict guidelines, like renting out real estate, but with gold. Instead of paying to store your metal, you may earn up to 4% annually in gold. You stay in control, and you can choose which leases to participate in. Monetary Metals handles the due diligence, lease terms, and all the administration. Thousands of investors use this approach to grow their gold, not just sit on it. Visit monetary-metals.com/Ken to learn more. Leasing gold involves risk, and returns are not guaranteed. This is not an offer to buy or sell securities. Please review all risk disclosures at monetary-metals.com. Visit monetary-metals.com/Ken to learn more.
Like, retirement used to be easy. Remember back in the pension days? I mean, it used to be easy. You didn't need financial education. But today, I would say it's almost, if not completely impossible to retire ever with confidence unless you've risen your financial education to understand what you're in, how it works, and that you control to some degree the streams of income and the taxation of that income.
It's interesting. It took me a long time to recognize let's call it Wall Street, right? The financial services sector. That really, even when I was 40, 50 years old, I'm turning my money over to college graduates that just got out, that are really just salespeople for products.
Yep.
That just got out of school, a few years ago, right? And I'm not saying that there's not some incredible wealth managers and financial planners out there, because I believe that there are. I know several of them, but really the whole system is set up. It's a sales funnel. That's all it is. And once you kind of realize that, and they don't often even know what products they're putting you in, because they're actually directing you to the ones that give them the best commissions.
Totally.
So the whole system is a bit of a mess. And you know, I don't want to generalize and say the whole industry is that way, but it is that way. And so, in order to take back control of your own money, by the way, Daniil knows this. Like my brother and I are super close. He's older than I am. He went straight into the corporate world. He was the A student in our house. And I was not. Let's just put it that way. But he retired recently, and I'm like, hey man, congratulations! I flew up there. I'm from Seattle, and we hung out, and I'm like, well, what are you invested in? Because I have never really had that conversation with him before. And he's like, I have no idea. Like, I talked to our guy, and he says we're good. And and by the way, I don't want to minimize it. They did go down the rabbit hole, and they started to take a look at everything. But I'm like, oh my gosh, like I would never have wanted to be in a position where I really don't know how my money is actually making money. Yeah. And that's really what he said. He doesn't know. He knows whether it goes up or down, right? And knows how much they've got. But I'm like, man, to me, those are some handcuffs, not knowing. Right.
Totally. I think this brings me back to Daniil's question that she asked to start this presentation off. I mean, if you don't know what you're invested in and you don't know how it works, then you're constantly aware of and nervous of who's in the Oval Office. What decisions are they making? Like, how's it going to work? Because all of that has a direct impact on you, but you don't really know how to connect the dots. You don't know how to correlate. Trump is raising tariffs. How's that going to affect my retirement plan? But if you do raise your financial education and you understand, I really believe there's two parallel economies going on simultaneously in our world. There's the dependency economy. And in the dependency economy, like I said, it's full of really good people with good intentions. They're probably doing the same thing they're recommending you, but they're dependent on a system that they have no control over. When I turn my money over to a financial advisor who's selling me a set of mutual funds, it's not like that person can predict the market any better than I can. That person doesn't have any insider knowledge on NVIDIA or, Tesla or whatever, right? They're just kind of picking and choosing and hoping it works. But they make money whether I win or lose, right? And that's frustrating. That's frustrating to me. But on the other side of the dependency economy, there's the ownership economy. And this isn't for everyone because owning assets and achieving financial freedom, it requires us to pick up both sides of the ownership stick, right? I have to pick up the fact that, look, if I want a result, I have to do the work. I have to raise my financial education. And when I don't get a result that I thought I wanted, the risk that I was taking was a lack of my financial education. I've lost a lot of money. I'm sure, you guys as you have as well. But every time I've lost money in real estate and I took ownership over why I had the loss, it makes me a better investor next time I do it, right? I've refined my decision-making process. I've refined my expectations of what's reasonable and possible with real estate. And it gets easier to make more money the next time and the next time and the next time. And so the ownership of the economy and the dependency economy, they exist in parallel. If I'm in the dependency economy, my fingers crossed, I got to wait till I'm 65 and I just hope it works out. If I'm in the ownership economy, it's exactly as, Bob Allen said in his book, you can retire in 10 years or less. I mean, you can use real estate and all of its many profit centers and other tax strategies to generate 6 figures or more of tax-free income. And you can do it in a constrained timeline with the right understanding of how money works.
Yeah.
So go ahead.
No, I was just going to say, I love that. I love how you break that out. I often say it's something similar where I call it you're either on the consumer side or you're on the producer side. Mm. And so, and the interesting thing is, just to take one more step, is the government actually rewards the ownership and the producer side. So that's why they give you tax breaks to provide housing or whatever it is, you provide jobs. And, there are things that there's incentives to do that side of it. When you're on the, I call it the consumer side, you're at a massive disadvantage. You don't really have the tax breaks and some of the things. So I call it just low hanging fruit. I tell everybody, just go form yourself an LLC and go do something, because
like you're going to have tax benefits because you're now in the game. You're not, yes, you're at the starting line still, but you've now just created a way to offset some of your ordinary income legally by, using the tools that the government gives you. And that was the real epiphany. I know what we talk about in real estate a lot here and, going out and buying it and passive income, but isn't like one of the most significant benefits of being able to offset that income legally?
It is fascinating. I mean, Ken, the more I've learned about money and how money works, I mean, this is an oversimplification of it, but basically the tax code is about 3,000 pages long and then several thousand pages beyond that with addendums and additional, information in there. But basically the very first sentence, the first line, the first section of the tax code says everything you make is taxable. Right. And if that's in there, then why do we need the other 3,000 pages? Right. And after that statement, that's what the other 3,000 pages are for. And I don't know, like I've never actually read all 3,000 pages front to back, but according to ChatGTP, it said that 38% of that tax code is applicable to one form or another, people who are putting their money in real estate. So the majority of the tax incentives, the IRS is using real estate because they need to drive economic behavior. They need to drive economic outcomes, and real estate's a major GDP driver. So they give people like you, like me, who raise our financial IQ incentives to say, hey, go do more of that, provide housing, provide resources, provide a great service to the economy, both local and federal, and you get to keep more of your money. And that right there, it made it so much easier for me, right? When I quit my job, I had cash flow coming in independent of taxes. I was making $150,000 a year, but that's not what I was keeping. After you take out taxes and money going to savings, I only needed about $6,700 of monthly tax-free income to replace my bare bones basic living expenses. So if I can understand the tax game, it becomes so much easier to create financial freedom in a very short period of time.
Yeah. And I think it's funny. First you start off just like you said, trying to create that financial freedom. But then the icing on the cake are the tax. Cause that's the piece that I didn't even understand until I started getting in the game. And actually in the early days, I had bookkeepers, CPAs that didn't either. I was doing my books and records. And then I fired one of them and I moved to somebody else and they said, well, you haven't been taking depreciation and all these other things that you can do. I go, what are you talking about? And then all of a sudden that just like opened that new chapter. That was a long time ago. But from there now, I'm in the position now where we have so many investors. We've had investors over 20 plus years now. That's all they care about is, they how do I offset this? My tax. And so I got calls all last week. Like I'm pulling this cash out, how do you have anything that will defer my taxes? Cause we're now in a year end situation.
Yeah.
And so I'm getting that question a lot. People are emailing me, texting me, is there anything you have that, I can write off my income? And so that's another piece that a lot of people don't get. Now, it takes obviously you have to have money. You have to be around people with money to actually understand that. But there does become a piece where once you pass that financial freedom and you move into the, call it preserving wealth, where that becomes almost as important as the passive income piece.
Totally does. I mean, taxes in one way or the other, they're the greatest destroyer of wealth. I mean, because if we really think about it, every dollar that we have, it's taxed multiple times, directly and indirectly, from things that, actual taxes, payroll taxes, employment taxes, sales tax, but also the kind of the hidden tax of inflation. And this is why I think today, Danielle, I know off air we were talking a little bit about how do people win today, right? With inflation, what it is, here's the way I think about it. Taxes, inflation, interest rates, opportunity cost, those are four economic forces. We can all say, hey, they all exist for every single person, for Ken, for me, for anyone watching this video or listening to this podcast. Those four economic forces, they exist. But the question you have to ask yourself is, are those economic forces, are they working for you or are they working against you? right? If we go back to the beginning, if I just put my money in a 401k, taxes are working against me. Inflation is massively working against me. Opportunity cost, because now I've locked up my money, is working against me. And then for most people, I mean, consumer debt has skyrocketed because my money's locked up. I go take credit card interest rate, with high interest rates, and interest rates are working against me. So for every step forward of me working hard, saving, all of these economic forces are working against me, making it harder, if not impossible, to ever achieve financial freedom. But if I just flip where my money's at, right, and we'll use real estate because that's really the focus of this conversation today, I can put my money in an asset where inflation makes me wealthy. I can put my money in an asset where taxes make me wealthy, where interest rates make me wealthy. I can borrow money at a fixed interest rate from a bank and triple that interest rate in an actual piece of real estate with leverage. Opportunity cost is working for me rather than against me. All of those economic forces, the biggest question that someone has to ask and answer for themselves is, am I putting my money in a position where those economic forces are making it easier or harder for me to achieve an outcome? And if you can just get clear on that, the game of money becomes so much easier.
Yep. Yeah.
So do you think that these Main Street investments are going to do better than the Wall Street investments in the next, let's call it 10 years?
Oh, I love that question. And who knows what we're going to predict down the road. But here's the one thing I'll say. Daniil, what do you think? Like, what is, like, if someone were to say, hey, the average return I'm going to get in the stock market is whatever, what do you think that number is?
Oh, I don't know anything about the stock market.
I think they'd be happy with 5 to 7%.
Yeah, 5, 7, 8%. Here's the crazy part. And I'm just going to use single family homes because that's what I specialize in. The compound annual growth rate of a boring 3-bedroom, 2-bath home, middle America that everyone wants, everyone needs to live in, most over demand, undersupplied. The compound annual growth rate is 5%. So if we just stop on the surface and the stock market makes 7, 8% and the compound annual growth rate of appreciation is 5%, you would look at that on the surface and say, market's better than the real estate. But here's the crazy part. If we go back to those economic forces, I can put a 20% down payment. I can go borrow 80% of the purchase price from the bank to then buy that asset, and I control and own the asset. And if all I had to do is put a 20% down payment and I'm still getting a 5% annualized compound annual growth rate, my actual rate of return on my 20% down payment is 25%. It's because of leverage, right? So leverage is the multiplier. That's really what it is. And leverage will cut both ways. That's why you have to raise your financial IQ. But if I can just buy a boring asset and let time, inflation, taxes, all of those things make me wealthy, then 100% I believe that anything on Main Street will outperform Wall Street. And there's just look at Warren Buffett. Warren Buffett is sitting on massive amounts of cash because he knows the market is overhyped and overvalued. But if we just look at it on its core, the market only makes money in one way. It appreciates. I don't control appreciation, right? That's public opinion. So I don't control it in real estate, but I don't control it in the market either. But if I can buy real estate, I get appreciation, I get amortization, I get tax advantages, and I get leverage. I get multiple profit centers working for me to where it increases my return, decreases my risk, and it makes it easier to achieve financial freedom.
Yeah, I think that's really well said. The other piece that you get is you get the tax write-off piece, but you also get the tenant pays it off for you. Like that's the piece that a lot of people forget. Like you're buying assets that somebody else is paying off, and in its simplest form, if you invest, shouldn't you buy things that somebody else pays off? Totally. Like just that simple, right? Like that's what I want. I want to buy stuff that other people want and they pay off for me.